I legit just don't know exactly how this 5th episode of the DarkspiderCast in Season 5 is going to play out. I sincerely don't know. I'm really hoping that it's going to be, a worthwhile effort, considering the circumstances at play here. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Welcome, guys. Welcome to another episode, one that may or may not be long or short. Not so much because, long or short. Not so much because of the same reason as last week. Obviously, the reason last week was that I'm sick, and technically speaking, I am, as you can kind of hear it a little bit in my voice. I'm kind of in the latter half of the entire situation, and I'm gonna try my best also to not make too many mouth noises. That's one thing that I've always hated about some people. Whenever they're sick, they're often kind of just doing all these things. Like, I know I hate it. And, it could be considered quote-unquote ASMR for some people out there and comforting or pleasant. Listen, there might be something fucking wrong with you. I know it sounds like judgment, and it probably is, but at least try to get yourself a second opinion. And after that, if you're still happy and you're not hurting anyone, then just live your life fine, okay? I concede to that. Anyways, so I will try my best not to make too many of those like grunts, trying to clear out the throat, because like I said, I'm in that latter half of being sick. As I mentioned last week, I had what was presumably a cold. I'll get into that in a little bit, but basically, I was much more worse for wear last week. This week, I'm in that latter half where I might sound a little worse. I might even look a little worse in terms of how thin and frail my hair looks, or if my sinuses are acting up, therefore causing my eyes to get a little watery, a little red around the white areas, such and such. But I actually feel good enough to do anything of substance, be able to work on content, being able to edit, being able to shoot, being able to be active, hell, even, do some workouts or whatever. If I had a job that had to do with like retail or fast food, and I needed to go into some place and clock in, I would be able to do it. God forbid. But basically, I'm in that phase of what, like I said, was presumably a cold. But you know what? I'm not even gonna dance around it. Let me go ahead and tackle this. What could be argued as probably the biggest topic of this episode, because I honestly did have to kind of scour around and see, okay, what exactly broke last week that I was kind of that I was in the process of putting over to the following week, because I wanted to keep that last episode short because I was sick, and also because I knew that Gamescom was going to be the main thing that everybody that keeps up with gamer news, keeps up with entertainment news, was really going to be talking about. So I really didn't want to jump from one topic and one medium or one industry to another, and try to keep things as succinct as possible. I'm hoping that will happen still here in this episode, but I'm still scared that a little bit of jumbleness is going to happen with the topics, because there were some that I knew I was carrying over from last week's episode, but then there's a couple of others that I'm like, yo, what is going on this week? Like, was anything, major announced? Was anything? And then I also thought about like some things that I kind of overlooked from Gamescom, one in particular revolving a brand new peripheral coming over from Sony that serves as a competition to one of Xbox's most prestigious control accessories out there. So we're definitely going to be talking about that. But still, I was looking at so many topics that weren't necessarily like breaking news. None of them were necessarily breaking the internet. And so, scouring through these different topics, I thought to myself, wow, the biggest one will probably be the fact that I have COVID. Yeah, so there it is. As I was mentioning, what I assumed was a cold may not have been a cold this entire time. Shyamalan twist. So the way that the chronicle kind of unfolds is that towards like Thursday or Friday, I started to feel a little bit better from this cold. Once I was kind of doing a little bit of the wrap-ups on that last episode, and I finally published it by that Thursday. Video went up a little later than expected because I gotta be honest, I kept forgetting to upload it because I was just so busy trying to get the third episode done. I was a little behind on the videos for the DarkspiderCast YouTube channel, but thankfully now I'm caught up, and I'm hoping that to stay caught up for the time being. Um, but then we get to like Saturday and Sunday, and overall, I'm still feeling pretty decent. I'm entering, like I said, that latter half where I feel good, even though I might sound a little nasally. I might sound like I'm constantly sniffing and coughing and clearing my throat and whatnot, but I'm technically feeling good inside. Because generally, that's how my colds and my flus always kind of work. Like the first half, I don't look or sound too bad, but I feel like utter shit and I just want to sleep. That's pretty much what Wednesday was. Um, Coming off the heels of or happening just right before I actually sat down to record that last episode. And that's why I kept it short. Um, that was that day. That was that phase. And then by the weekend, I was entering the second phase where, yes, my sinuses starting acting up, and I was constantly having a runny nose, sniffles as they always call them. Constantly sneezing, and then clearing the throat of the loose phlegm in there. Not to sound gross, but as soon as I start to feel and taste that loosey phlegm, um, it's kind of gross, but at the same time, to me, it's always been a good sign because it means that, hey, everything's loosening up. I'm exiting this thing. Well, on Monday, I get a text from my girlfriend saying that her mom tested positive for COVID. And so now, because the plan was for me to come over, and she tells me, don't come over. My mom just came up positive. And she was at work, my girlfriend, when she got this. And she's like, I have rapid tests at home. As soon as I get home, I'm going to take one. A few hours later, she texts me, yeah, I'm positive. So, and even before she got home from work, I already made the rounds. I already scheduled not a rapid test, but, well, kind of a rapid test-ish. It's not the immediate, like, in a few minutes type, but the one where you go to, like, a facility, you go to a place where they have the things, the people set up with the swabs and whatnot. Went and got one done there. And came home, and then that's finally when I got the text from my girlfriend saying, yeah, I came out positive. So I told her, hey, I got tested, so it's just a matter of waiting by either tomorrow or the day after. But so far, feeling pretty good. Sinuses are even better than they were before. Energy's pretty good. Like I said, I could almost swear that I will come up negative because she was telling me that, oh, it's her and her mom, but her brother, her sister, and her dad are negative. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe your mom got it from work because she does work with elderly people in like hospice or whatever. And so maybe I managed to dodge the bullet when I left her house on Sunday, because right when I was leaving, her parents were coming home. So that's why I'm like, I think I missed it. Well, fast forward to Tuesday morning, and I got the text and the email of my results, and they come up positive. And it's funny because that psychological shit starts happening where I was feeling good. I was even hungry for breakfast. I make myself breakfast, and then when I get the results, I'm like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna throw up," or something like that. You know what I mean? Like and then quickly, I'm like, "Wait a minute, no, you're not," because it's psychological. You just saw the results and you got scared. And as soon as I became kind of self-aware of that, I felt fine again. I legit feel fine, even as I'm recording this right now. I feel fine. I'm just have to clear the throat every so often for, like I said, some phlegm bouncing around in there, but otherwise, I feel fine. And I'm like, okay, so this, tiny little cough of me trying to clear out the airways of phlegm, is it from the cold or is it from this new COVID case? What exactly is the deal? And then as I'm texting back and forth with my girlfriend and then letting her know that, hey, I got my results and even I'm positive too, she then comes up with a theory that maybe I had it the whole time. This whole time, what I thought was the cold was COVID. But because I tested last week, I did do a test and that came out negative. But it might have been a false negative because I went and got tested too early into the onset of my symptoms. I got tested like less than 24 hours after I started feeling symptoms. And it's possible that maybe that was way too early. Um, and here's the thing, I know the source of where this all came from. It was my brother, my younger brother who's living with us. Let's just say he's not the most careful person at all. I mean, whether he's doing it on purpose or not, I don't know, but he is not designed to take things into consideration and be preemptive about other people's safety and surroundings, unfortunately. I mean, that's just the truth. And I remember a couple of times hearing him in the bathroom, um, after he gets done using it. And I think, that's the thing. Sometimes I hear him wash his hands. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I hear him take a piss and then walk right out. And I'm like, what the fuck, bro? But literally, bro. And then I think once or twice I did hear him cough into a towel. I can tell he's coughing into a towel because it sounds muffled. And he was sick. He was sick, and supposedly his son was sick too. So they either one gave it to the other or vice versa. Doesn't matter. But it was him coughing into one of those towels that me and my dad used to take a shower or whatever. That probably got us. And lo and behold, I heard my dad be coughing around too. And then right now, at the time of this recording, my mom is also coughing and sneezing. They're still kind of, walking around acting normal. So they're not too impeded, but it's quite possible that they have it as well. They are in the process of getting tested now. And they're both vaccinated, and I'm vaccinated as well. So that's probably another thing that's helping with any potential symptoms. And why it is that I surprisingly feel good, or not good, but fine. So the theory that the girlfriend came up with is that maybe my brother had it in him the entire time ever since early last week. And this entire time we just both got false negatives for testing way too early. And so that's really where it came from. So knock on wood, not legitimate knock on wood, I'm hoping that this means two things. One, I'm out of the contagious period, which means I'm hoping nothing got passed to my friends who I saw on Saturday. But obviously, I told them already, and I told them to go get tested. One of them did a rapid test that he has to do for work, and he says he came out negative. So that kind of helps me feel better about that. That's the first thing, that I'm hoping that I'm out of the contagious stage. But secondly, I'm also hoping that it just means that I'm out of the worst of it as far as symptoms. Because since potential exposure, if the exposure was my girlfriend's mom when I missed them on Sunday, I think it was when I last saw them, then it's been about 48 hours. If, however, it was my brother, and that first day or those first 2-3 days where I felt like utter shit was the worst of it, then here I am almost a full-blown week. Almost a full-blown week later. So now it's just a matter of waiting just an additional couple of days to get a tried and true negative result back. So I'm going to wait until like Thursday or Friday-ish of this week to schedule yet another testing, go in, and figure that out. By then, it'll be like 4 days or almost 5 days since the prior test. So that should be a lengthy enough interval to get that worked out and get a much more accurate reading, if you will. So yeah, so now quarantining, keeping things locked down. Oh no, what should I ever do? Yeah, I got some reviews to work on. I got quite a few brand new additions to the Marvel Legends collection and McFarlane Toys collection to work on for the niche channel, for the Batman Spider-Man channel. We got some games to play and some games to move on through, considering that now we have a progression in the What I've Been Playing segment this week. But before we get to that segment, just to clarify, I'm so far doing pretty good. Even the girlfriend's actually pretty good, which is funny because she's technically not vaccinated. So the fact that she's holding her own, and she says that so far it just feels like a cold with a little bit of sore throat and a cough. All things considered, we're doing pretty good. So I know it's kind of there was a little bit of whiplash there in that sudden kind of turn from one, slightly concerning topic to now talking about video games. But at the same time, I felt like that was a good enough segue to play into this part right here. And I am also breaking a little bit from the format because, frankly, like I did last week, this is generally where I would talk about She-Hulk. And I did watch episode 2. Probably by the time you're listening to this, episode 3 will probably be out there. And I know that there's rumors going around that there's something about that third episode that's going to have people talking. More on that probably on the following week, considering the way that, like I said, things are going to unfold this week with me and the girlfriend's current prognosis of our COVID cases here, as well as just, what may or may not be happening with the content that I need to be creating and things for work and such like that. So, because of that, I can only talk about episode 2. We'll get to that momentarily, though. In the meantime, I wanted to talk about what I've been playing video game-wise. I finally, to a extent, to a degree, to a very placated degree, I beat Spiritfarer. But I beat it solely on the mercy. I don't even want to call it mercy because it's going to make me sound like I'm speaking rather ill will about the game, but resting on the laurels and mercifulness of what's called the Lily update. And the reason why it's called the Lily update is because the Lily update for Spiritfarer was pretty much a piece of DLC, free DLC, that was released for the game after its initial launch. However, and I remember noticing this, that for the longest time, Spiritfarer was on Game Pass, and it just had like the standard Spiritfarer look, the standard artwork, and it was just called Spiritfarer. But since then, the little icon when you select it has changed to a revamped one, and the title is officially now Spiritfarer Farewell Edition. And I thought to myself, okay, is this like a enhanced version with like different mechanics and added little things you can do on your own when you're going around the islands and you're fishing and you're doing all these different activities? Kind of, sort of, but at the same time, they actually ended up adding DLC to the game with brand new characters you interact with and quest lines that you have to complete in order to bring these people to the Everdoor and get them to pass over to the other side. It's just unfortunate that my dumbass didn't bother to check who was that DLC and who wasn't, because I just kept on playing the game. So as I mentioned in last week's episode, I just kept playing on and trying to factor in how my personal playstyle will fit into this game and how I was slowly but surely being grabbed by the game in a very positive way, which was a complete 180 than the way that I felt at the very beginning when I started playing it 2 weeks ago. Because it started off on a wrong and very negative foot. Like, I wasn't clicking with the game. It was kind of annoying me. It felt very padded. It felt like there was just a lot of waiting around. But then by that second week, that second episode where I tackled Spiritfarer, I mentioned how I was able to start learning how to multitask as the ship got bigger and more sources were becoming available to me. Then it was starting to fit a groove with me. Then I was like, okay, while the ship is traveling, since it's going to take forever for that ship to travel, then I'll go ahead and start planting these seeds, or I'll start creating this linen, and I'll start doing this, and that. And I was multitasking, and like the game was encouraging me to do, managing everything around me as I was trying to fulfill these tasks for these different spirits that needed my help to cross over. Well, in the week since that last episode, we kind of dipped back in the direction of me wanting the game to be over. But not in a hair-pulling sort of way, not in a tremendously frustrating way. I still feel more positive than I do negative with the game, but it was starting to kind of dip its toes in that pool of me going, okay, I'm ready for you to finish. I'm ready for you to wrap things up, because you are feeling a little bloated here with things that just did not need to unfold the amount of times that they did. Especially when I came to the realization that some of those spirits that I was helping were actually some of the DLC spirits and not the ones you need that were part of the core game. Beyond that, there was also one particular spirit that I had to look up how to solve their situation, which wasn't even a situation. It was literally a treasure hunt quest that required me to go to different parts of the map that were kind of hinted at through these little pictures that you need to project. So it never gives you an accurate reading of where these treasures are. And eventually, like I said, I was getting just kind of exhausted with the game that I just looked them up. And thank God that I did. I'm sorry, I'm not taking it back. Thank God that I did. Because it turns out that this spirit cannot be brought to the Everdoor and cannot be helped to cross over to the other side. Like, it just doesn't happen. And it's good that I figured that out through looking up their walkthrough, because if I hadn't, I would have just waited and waited and waited like a dumbass for some kind of event to trigger. Because sometimes some of these spirits you are required to wait for them to come to you and be like, "Hey, I'm ready for this," or "I'm ready for that." Um, special and that goes double for some characters that unfortunately are not likable. And this could be leaning more towards the subjectiveness of the game, because some might feel, some other people might feel differently while playing. I'm legit want to look up some let's plays and playthroughs from like Twitch streamers or whatever to see how they felt about certain avenues of this game. But there were certain characters that I generally did like and hated to see go over to the other side when I had to bring them to the other door. And then there were others where I'm like, yeah, it's your time to go. Get the fuck out. I'm sorry. I call me an evil bastard, but there was one where I don't have the patience. Let's just say that in real life, I don't have the patience for a certain demographic of people, and it kind of bled a little bit into how I felt about this character in the game. And I was like, yeah, I'm not the best person for this. And that's leaning more towards being on the subjective side of how I feel about those characters, because there might be some people who play this on Twitch live or on their own off stream or whatever, and probably approaching those characters and thinking, oh, poor them, sympathizing with them, that sort of thing. So it could vary. There's one character, however, or I should say a pair of characters, I think I kind of aforementioned them a little bit earlier, where they're objectively assholes. They're objectively terrible, down to the bitter end. And at first I thought, yeah, just fuck these guys. I really don't care. The sooner they get off this boat, the better. But at the same time, I was still able to kind of find a form of catharsis inside of their characters, inside of the arc that factored into this game and why it is that they were here, to kind of symbolize like one of the takeaways that kind of made me have an epiphany, kind of like the same way that I had an epiphany about the game last week, where it finally clicked with me. These characters too, despite still being assholes objectively, like they really are, my mind didn't change about them, how they factored into the game and why it is their purpose here did kind of change a little bit, in a way where I'm like, well, I guess maybe the game is just trying to tell me that some people just can't change. Some people just can't change. Some people are beyond your control, and you shouldn't stress out about trying to change them, about trying to better them. Like, they're just gonna have to figure shit out on their own, and that's just how life is. So as soon as I accepted that, I was like, yeah, I am vibing with this game a whole lot more, not just from a gameplay standpoint where I was doing a lot of multitask stuff and management, which is ultimately what the game's genre is modeled after, management, being able to manage stuff for the farm on your boat, the field, resources, things like that, stuff that I just wasn't expecting to be over here and actually finding myself in a loop where I'm like, well, I got to get this done. And in the moment, sure, I had my stressful moments where I was like, I need to wait for this thing to happen. And towards the end here, I was kind of starting to feel like the game was slightly overstaying its welcome. Granted, a little bit of that could be factored into the notion, the knowledge that I was ultimately playing what is technically an expanded version of the game, and not so much the default game. If it was the default game, I probably would have beaten it, I want to say, with about 5 to 7 hours shaved off. So this last leg of the game really was kind of, I guess I'll use the term padded out, but not padded in the traditional sense, just in a way where it's like, well, you're playing a longer version. It's like watching the extended version of one of the Lord of the Rings movies and going, that was too long, and somebody letting you know that you didn't realize you were watching the extended version, not the original theatrical cut, and you're like, oh shit, I can't remember what movie it was, but there was one movie where I watched the movie and I was like, whoa, that was beefy, and then later on I found out that I actually watched the extended version. So when I watched the regular version, I was like, oh yeah, we cut from that to that too quickly, and it felt much shorter. And somebody or somewhere online I confirmed that I watched the director's cut or the extended cut first before the theatrical cut. I was like, oh, goddamn. This is kind of like a similar case in gaming form. However, that might have somewhat paid off, because there's one, there's like three DLC packets in the game, or three spirits, three brand new characters kind of incorporated into the main game through that free DLC. Two of which are just traditional, two more spirits just to kind of fare off into the other side, so to speak. One, however, and I'll keep it spoiler free in the event that any of you are planning on playing this game, even though by the time you're listening to this, unfortunately, it has been removed from Game Pass, which is why I had to pivot and, now I don't want to say speedrun it, but get it out of my backlog as soon as possible. But in the event that it ever goes on sale again for like $10, either on PSN, actually I think on PSN it is $10 right now, but on other platforms like Switch, Xbox again, or whatever, if it ever goes on sale and you are kind of in the market for picking it up, or it kind of piques your interest somewhat, I'll keep it spoiler free. Because if you do end up getting this enhanced version or the farewell version, it comes with an update called the Lily update. And without, like I said, going into too many spoilers, let's just say that I'm so glad that this Lily update was added. Without it, the game would have felt a little incomplete. Later on, after beating the Lily update, let's just say that the way it kind of concludes is it definitely felt like a correction from the developers to be like, okay, yeah, we didn't really have a definitive end before. Let's give you a definitive ending now, and feel like a proper closure is brought to the entirety of the game, not just a particular spirit that you're, faring off to the other side and to be able to pass to the Everdor. Outside of the traditional, I don't want to say rinse and repeat, but the traditional structure of how you tend to these spirits' needs. You have to improve their houses. Because after a little while, it's starting to get a little, just a tiny bit repetitive. You kind of get the gist of what's going to go down with some of these spirits. You're going to have to do some tasks for them. Eventually, they're going to ask for their own place on the boat. You have to improve that place, wait for them to talk to you, and then finally be like, all right, I'm ready for the Everdor. And ever so often, I did feel that slight sting of like, why am I improving? Like once you get the gist of how all this is gonna unfold, you start to feel a little empty when you're improving their house, realizing that eventually they're gonna move on. And there's a couple of spirits where as soon as you improve their house, they're like, okay, well, I'm ready to leave. And I'm like, well, then why did you just have me do all that shit for you? So it kind of took the wind out of the sails. So a little bit of that was starting to kind of seep in towards the end here, but thankfully, right when that was happening, the Lily update began within my playthrough, and I'm glad that it did, because like I said, it gave this form of resolution not just to that character Lily, but also just the overall game in a way where I'm like, oh my god, I am so glad that this game ended where it did. Like, it ended when it did, where it did, and how it did. And yeah, I mean, it did start to lose just a little bit of steam, but I'm glad that I got to play Spiritfarer. I just wish it was a little bit of the, I don't want to say confines, but stressors of, seeing the time restriction kind of closing in on me, knowing that the game was going to get removed on the 31st, was not there, because then it would have made some sessions with the game a little less stressful, because there were times where I was thinking to myself, like, am I going to be able to cut this? Am I going to be able to get this done before the 31st? Thankfully, a couple of days prior, again, without spoilers, there's a particular character that's kind of your anchor to tell you how far exactly you are in the game, and how close you are to completion. There is a percentage whenever you load up the game. I just didn't know if that percentage was just the main story, or if it counted every single, errand and request that you can do in the game that will lead you to 100% completion for those completionists out there, trophy hunters and achievement hunters. But overall, very, very glad that I got to play Spiritfarer. I wish it was under some slightly less stressful consequences, but I'm glad that I got it out of the way. But some of the management, like I said, started to wear a little thin. That this is definitely an experience that, how I've had other experiences on Game Pass where I told myself, I played this game, I had so much fun with it that I'm willing to pay an extra like $10 or $15 to rebuy it on Switch, so that then I can take it with me on the go, or even on Steam if I ever get my Steam Deck back. This is not necessarily that game, to be honest. I really don't see myself repurchasing this game. Maybe if like me and the girlfriend move in and she wants to play it on the Switch, and maybe I could find it for $10 again, that would be nice. But outside of that, I think I got my full with Spiritfarer. And just like last week, Spiritfarer really was just the majority of my playtime this week as far as what I've been playing. So there's very little that I can really talk about else when it comes to gaming, except I did manage to get a couple of sessions on Spider-Man Remastered for the PC, or rather specifically here, the Steam Deck. So I managed to pretty much get as far as getting the advanced suit. So as soon as he changes into the advanced suit, he gets the white symbol, he goes into free roam. That's kind of the extent of where I wanted to go, playing on a very standard playthrough of Spider-Man on PC and tinkering with all of the different settings as far as how far can I push this thing before it crashes. And trust me, I did manage to get Spider-Man to crash on my Steam Deck, or on the Steam Deck, at least once. And here's the bummer here. I don't really want to talk about it too much here on podcast form, because what I'm doing here is kind of sort of a process, or at least a evolution that is going to be all captured and chronicled, if that's the word, for a YouTube video. So that's why I don't really want to put too much of my thoughts here on podcast form, because I want to save a few of them for a video to then put into bullet points and things like that. So overall though, like the overview perception or experience of how it was to play Spider-Man on Steam Deck was that this is probably one of the first, brand new experiences in 2022. Yeah, how ethically, what side do you fall on the ethical spectrum of how PlayStation is now porting over exclusives over to PC? I don't know. I'm of the mind that I'm okay with it as long as it's this long of a time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like that it's not day and date, like, oh yeah, it's coming to PlayStation and PC the same day. Like, God of War Ragnarok is not coming out on PC in November. If anything, God of War Ragnarok is going to come out on PC probably in what? Where are we now? 2022, and then this year we barely got the original God of War and Spider-Man on PC, and both of those games literally came out in 2018. So what? 2026, 2025, 2026, we'll get the PC versions of Ragnarok and maybe Last of Us Part 1. So, oh god, that game. Everybody's talking about that game right now. But so I'm okay with as long as we have that window, that gap to at least have the exclusivity flavor still lingering in our palates while we play these games exclusively on PlayStation. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, I don't want to sound like a gatekeeper, but at the same time, you gotta have to give some reasoning, some logic behind owning these consoles. Otherwise, why did I buy them for? It's like that Game of Thrones meme. Why did I pay you for? To make me sad. That was a terrible accent, I'm sorry. But, you catch my drift. So, Spider-Man now coming to PC, I'm like, all right, yeah, timing-wise, it's right. It's good. It's ripe for it. And so when they announced that it was coming to PC, to be honest, the first thought that I had, beyond the mods, was going to be, can it run on Steam Deck? And before any, lengthy amount of time even passed, Insomniac confirmed that it was deck verified. And I needed to see this for myself, so I did not buy it, but it was actually my buddy, Surface Assassin, who I sold the Steam Deck to, who went ahead and bought it because he was stoked to play Spider-Man. And so I borrowed it back from him. Actually, it was his idea to let me borrow it. He came up with the whole thing, and he was like, and I'm like, sure, I just agreed. So the Steam Deck is now in my possession, like I mentioned on last week's podcast, and I installed the game. A lot of patch notes, a lot of updates, and things like that, which is probably one of my major crux of playing the Steam Deck in general, not just for Spider-Man, but probably for any game, is that if you are complete SOL on good internet, or if it's cutting in and out, such was the case when I spent the night at my girlfriend's place a couple of nights since, where like the best example was actually this week. I spent the night at my girlfriend's to go to work the next day, and I thought to myself, well, I'm away from my Xbox, I'm away from Spiritfarer. I already got some editing done. I kind of want to, decompress a little bit. Perfect time to load up Spider-Man on the Steam Deck. And lo and behold, Steam says, "Oh well, to do that, we need to update Spider-Man, and it's a 20 gigabyte update." And her internet, you know, I love her, but her internet, her place sucks. It sucks, especially if you're in longer, farther proximity from the router, which is quite literally at one end of the house. So if you're on the other end, which is where her room is, it's literally it was literally telling me it was gonna take at one point it told me it was gonna take about an hour to download the patch, and I'm like, oh, an hour, I could just watch some YouTube videos. And then when I checked again, it told me it was gonna take 5 hours. So I gave up. I did not play that night. I was like, well, this is probably going to be one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest cons that you could probably put up on a pros and cons list in regards to the Steam Deck. One of the surprising pros, however, was that while playing the game, the ergonomics behind the Steam Deck actually work in favor of one of the biggest factors, or one of the biggest pillars of Spider-Man as a game, is this web swinging and the combat. It actually feels intuitive. I'd never felt like there was a issue of me playing this thing as long as it's rested on my lap, because obviously the console itself is rather weighty. But outside of that, I was like, hey, look at me. Look at me. I'm swinging as Spider-Man, and it's portable. It's actually on my lap, in my hands, and I'm playing Insomniac's Spider-Man. And it's running rather smoothly. It may not look the prettiest. I know that right now the PC is probably the optimum way to look at a game like Spider-Man in terms of ray tracing, fidelity, frame rate, all that stuff. But then when you try to compact as much of that as possible into the Steam Deck, that's where I spent like a good almost 2 hours flipping back and forth during the opening sequence. I'm telling you, almost the entire prologue, from when you first load up that first cutscene to when, mild spoilers, even though it happens in the first 15 minutes, when Fisk finally gets arrested and the game finally releases you out into the open New York sandbox. That entire session, I was just constantly pausing and flipping back and forth between the settings as far as anti-aliasing, dynamic resolution upscaling, leaving the game alone, completely unlocked from any tethers, or if I was using the AMD Radeon thing, or if I was using IGTI, and I'm not going to pretend to be Digital Foundry over here. I'm just flipping through the different presets and then going over to graphics. And I know that you can even toggle some of the things individually, like, oh, do you want the ray tracing to be high but the texturing to be low, or vice versa, going back and forth. This is something that I definitely want to experiment with when I have the power to do so. And that power is only going to really truly be tapped by an actual gaming tower. I know that I can only go so far on the Steam Deck. And I found that out the hard way when one of the sessions where I was just free roaming and going through those back and forths, flipping through different presets of quality, going from, normal to high to very high. I toggled it to very high, and even the UI and the pause menu was lagging. It was going super slow that it crashed. Like the game froze. None of the buttons were working. I'm like, there it goes. It poofed. It popped. And I had to force reset the Steam Deck, and that's kind of where my limitations kind of struck. So again, I don't want to divulge too much into that because I want to save some of this information for that potential YouTube video, since it is technically a Spider-Man related piece of content. But so far, it's been a very interesting experience to play on Spider-Man. Just know that I finally figured out a way to balance out all of the graphics in a way where it looks sharp on the screen despite not being a full HD screen. It's, like 1280 by 900 or something like that on the Steam Deck. But it looks sharp enough, but at the same time smooth enough with the frame rate to feel fluid and to feel like a very intuitive experience to take what I originally played on the PS4 and just shrink it down into the palm of my hand on Steam Deck. And so far, I'm enjoying it. Now the next phase that not only I want to experiment with, but also put into the YouTube video and start capturing footage for and writing down notes. Whether or not I'm actually going to divulge into this next week, I might not. In fact, this might be the last time you might hear me talk on the podcast about playing Spider-Man on the Steam Deck, because I want to save the rest for the YouTube video. But I'll just let you know, The next phase is, of course, to try and see how I can get some of those mods running on Steam Deck. I already watched one video that made me dizzy by just how many steps there are in the process. One of which involves having to take a micro SD card that I had, completely sealed because I wasn't really in the market of using one. But now I'm like, yeah, the process literally says you need to put the Spider-Man on an SD card to have the Steam Deck mod tool to recognize it. I'm like, great, I have to do all this. So, it sounds like it's going to be a little exhaustive, but at the same time, experimental and kind of exciting. So I might go ahead and try to do that and see how much of that I can squeeze into the video. So if you guys don't hear any more about it here on the podcast on next week's episode, that is why. But so far, they really pulled off the magic of being able to play Spider-Man on a handheld like the Steam Deck. And if you're still kind of on the fence of buying your own Steam Deck, at least get the bare minimum one, $400, and lo and behold, you're able to play Spider-Man on the go. I mean, it sounds, on paper, it sounds like, well, I'll get to that when I get to that, but knowing that you can flip from that to God of War portably, just think about the concept and how unachievable that was just a mere 10 years ago, and look where we are now. It's a little exhilarating witnessing it firsthand. I know most of you have probably already watched episode 2 and 3 by the time you guys are listening to this. Me and the girlfriend are still one episode behind, and of course that's going to be a little bit of an issue this week considering our COVID issues and scheduling and whatnot. So we'll try to get to episode 3 as quickly as possible, especially since her and I are both conscious of how trigger happy a lot of people are with those spoilers. I've done my fair share of trying to mute stuff on Twitter. Especially since, some people are already kind of going out there, talking about certain things. With episode 3, some controversial stuff that is, in fact, a little on the... And what's funny is that even though I can't talk about episode 3, I can talk about episode 2, which I didn't last week. Last week, I only talked about 1. So I can at least give you guys some thoughts on episode 2, because since then, I have been able to catch that episode. But to kind of put things a little bit into perspective, and you know what? I'm gonna save it up here. I'm gonna save it up. I'm gonna create a little bit of an arc here, a little bit of a poignant sort of circle around to a point I'm trying to articulate. I'm trying to make. So episode 2 of She-Hulk, and this is going to be a very brief review and impressions, thoughts on what went down in that episode. You know why? Because that's literally my thoughts and impressions will literally make up half of the actual running time for the goddamn episode. I mean, they're getting shorter and shorter. And here's the thing, the runtime doesn't inherently need to be an issue. All right, because they made it clear at the very beginning during marketing and whatnot about how each episode, how the episodes in She-Hulk are going to be shorter. It's going to be 9 episodes, more episodes quantity-wise than prior Marvel shows, but they're all going to be a little shorter each. Even my girlfriend tallied up the math, and she was like, yeah, that makes sense, because if you tally it up, it's almost equaling to that of a 6-episode season that had each episode be around the cusp of about 50 to 55 minutes, maybe even a full-on hour-long finale or premiere. So it was all adding up. I was like, all right, that kind of makes a little bit more sense. It's just that now with the second episode, it was kind of becoming a little clear to me that it more clear and obvious to me that they should have just premiered this whole premiere for She-Hulk the week prior should have been the first 2 episodes, maybe even the first 3. We'll see once we get to episode 3, once I actually am able to talk about it on next week's episode. But with episode 2, for damn sure, this should have premiered back to back with 1. Because it's even shorter than the first episode. It's 30 minutes minus the end credits. You're probably looking at about 26 minutes. And keep in mind that Disney Plus fucking adds that little, I don't want to say disclaimer, but like all the translation voices at the end. So that kind of pads out a little bit of the running time with the credits. I mean, I know that, the credits need to be due to the people who, brought work, but, it's adding to it. So it's like, we're not really dealing with the full 30 minutes where to begin with, it's more like 25, 26. So with this episode, it's a lot shorter, and because of that, if you want to look at it, there's a lot less going on. We get through the introductory phase of her becoming She-Hulk and Bruce trying to tell her how to manage as She-Hulk and whatnot, but then her getting back into, what was it, San Francisco? I think that's where she's at, or Los Angeles. I think it was San Fran. And so she's back there, and the end of the episode is just so abrupt and shit just happens. That kind of persists a little bit here in episode 2, where shit just kind of happens. I mean, and I'm gonna go into some mild spoilers here. I'm not gonna fully disclose everything, but you guys want me to give you pretty much the cliff notes of what happens in episode 2? And you can kind of see this in the trailer. In fact, what happens in episode 2 is literally just the point of intrigue from the trailer, which is that Jennifer Walters is needed to be the lawyer and represent superpowered beings and be the lawyer of a superhero or superpowered division of some kind. That's kind of the episode. I swear to God, like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, what went down in episode 2? She was fired from her job because of what happened at the end of the first episode. She suffered for 5 minutes. I mean, yeah, we got that quick, like, oh, rejection. Oh, boo-hoo. What, she got rejected from like 5 jobs that we saw? And in her downtime, she's, in her cozy, nice little apartment, and then literally, and God only knows how long that was really the amount of time. We didn't get the proper, that's probably my first inherent problem, is that we didn't get the proper sense of time of how far. For all I know, that was just a fucking week of her, with 3 days of her, going out and submitting resumes and them saying, well, you're the She-Hulk and we don't want that kind of publicity or that showy stuff. And that's it. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys that was attending the courtroom at the end of the first episode just happened to literally walk into a bar and be like, hey, I want to offer you a job. And she just says, I'll take it. And she takes it. And everything turns. And then, again, you see this in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. Her first person that she needs to defend and represent is, of course, the Abomination himself, Emil Blonsky. And she has a powwow with him via, a la Hannibal Lecter. They even make a kind of self-referential joke about how it's like, Papa Beans and Asciante, which admittedly was kind of funny, actually. I did, because that's where my thoughts were going. The way that the security guard was describing him, I'm like, who is this, Hannibal Lecter? Jesus. So, okay. And then that's it. That's kind of the crux. There's 2 little pieces of information that are very, very interesting and are very huge takeaways. They are, actually, I'll take that back, more like 3. But they are a little bit on the spoilery side, so I'm going to save them up here. I do want to talk about them, but I kind of want to give some disclosures for any of you who have not watched episode 2 and want to skip ahead. For the time being, though, like I said, that's the recap of episode 2, and that's why I'm thinking to myself, like, what really went down in episode 2? And that's just how flat it was. It really was. Like, I just recounted everything in my head, and I'm like, well, that was it. Congratulations. That's like half or at least a third of the trailer to get us to watch the show. That's why the whole time I'm like, this really should have been packed in with episode 1 as a 2-part premiere, at the very least. Maybe even 3-part if episode 3 proves to not be all that much different. Granted, we didn't, maybe episode 3 shouldn't have been bundled in because at the time we didn't know that Megan Thee Stallion was going to be joining the fucking MCU before Fantastic Four do. Or the X-Men do. I'm not actually bummed about that. It's fucking whatever. You gotta get the kids. So, because of just how flat it was, I mean, I can't necessarily talk more shit than I was before, aside from that one line that made me cringe, which was the line from the man's man that was in that bar when she walks in and her friend convinces her to get kind of all showy and whatever prior to her getting fired. Yeah, that one guy who was like, there's a female over there, I'm gonna go talk to it. I'm like I'm not gonna go online and boycott and rage out, have my own Hulk out moment of like, oh my God, can you believe how they wrote all the men here? But at the same time, they can write the men shittily all they want, just like I can go ahead and just not like it and get the impression that that's not making you look better. You know who I'm talking to, whether it be the writer, director, whoever's idea was it to put that line in. I'm really hoping that going forward we can really focus on Jen's character development, who was much easier to swallow. Well, weird words, but she was, I don't want to say more likable, but a bit. She was an easier pill to swallow in the second episode than in the first one. And it's probably because Bruce wasn't really clashing with her all that much. In fact, she even had her moment where she was trying to reach out to Bruce because of the potential conflict of interest with Emil Blonsky. So I'm like, all right, there's a little bit of I don't want to say relaxation, but a little bit of levity going on right there, going in. But still, like I said, to me, it's coming off force. It's my impression that the way that they're trying to put women up and put men down, it just feels forced. If it was maybe on a much more natural side and a much more understanding side, because going back to what Jen was saying about getting catcalled and all that stuff, which was a big point of controversy on Twitter and certain communities, Reddit, etc. I'm not saying that what she experienced is not true, because it is. Women do go through that. But it just makes her look like an even shittier person to completely dismiss what Bruce went through. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not trying to negate the shit that she has gone through as a woman, or any woman has gone through, but at the same time, it doesn't help her case when she's completely arrogant and blind to that stuff. And then when you have characters on the side, like, yeah, and what I'm trying to also accept is like, okay, if this was, say, like an animated She-Hulk show that was on Cartoon Network or whatever, like, if a side character, a male side character on the side, were to say a line like that, would I have laughed? It's actually kind of possible that I would have, and been like, wow, like, look at this piece of shit on the side. Whereas in live action, I guess maybe it's because it's live action that I'm like, you need to try to write your characters a little less on the nose versus being on the nose with animation, because with animation, it's already, it's animated. It's exaggerated by default. You're going to have characters moving and behaving and looking a certain kind of way that's overcharacterized. So saying lines like, there's a female over there, I'm going to go talk to it. I'm going to go hit on it or something like that. It's a caricature, and because maybe in animation it flows better. In live action, it just feels forced. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe it's just the medium that this is being presented in. Maybe they were trying to, who knows? Maybe the original pitch was to have an animated show, but because they wanted to factor it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they needed to make it live action. Who knows? I would say that right now, maybe it would have been a much more funner and satirical and very what's the word I'm looking for? Commentating show for Marvel to have extrapolated from if it was maybe animated. And maybe that's my problem and why certain lines like that are bothering me. Because, don't get me wrong, I walking away from the episode, or even later that night as I was kind of going through Twitter when the episode premiered last week, yeah, it's the whole time I was like, am I the asshole? Am I simply just a misogynist and I don't know it? Am I sexist? All right, perhaps, I don't know, but that's just how I feel. Hell, if that's the case, then my girlfriend, I guess, is also sexist towards her own gender, because guess what? She felt like it was kind of forced as well with those little lines. And again, my theory is that maybe it could be the medium. Maybe if this was in animation form, it would have clicked a little better. But for me, little moments like that, they have to go soon. Because if they don't go soon, then this is pretty much by default, it's going to be one of my least favorite of not just Disney Plus Marvel shows, but probably just Marvel projects, properties in general, lumped in there with some of the movies and some of the things that we've had recently. Who knows? But that was pretty much what kind of went down in episode 2, minus the other 2 major takeaways that are very key points of interest, or rather 3 takeaways. They are, however, a little bit on the spoilery side. So spoilers, go ahead and skip a little ahead here to the next commercial break, or I want to say about maybe 5 minutes or so. I'll try to keep this a little bit on the briefer side. But one of them was simply just an Easter egg as Jen was quote unquote looking for jobs. Not really, she was, trying to be woe is me by looking up mascot jobs. Like, yeah, again, on the nose. And it's something that maybe would have translated better if it was in animation. But whilst it was on that site, there was an article on the side, one of those little spammy clickbaity sites. Well, two of them in particular. One was a reference to Eternals about the Celestial that's coming out of the ground that was being awoken at the end of Eternals. For the five of you that watched that movie. But then the other one was about a man fighting a group of dudes in a bar with claws. Nice. Very, very nice. Some people are hearkening to the original 2000 film. Others are actually making correlations to the recent teaser trailer from Insomniac when they revealed that they're working on a game, because that's pretty much what the teaser trailer was. Logan in a bar, getting ready to throw down for a second round. Bars. That rhymed. So that was the first one. So but it was merely just an Easter egg. In fact, I missed it. I had to look at Instagram images after the fact. So then it was the other two major ones, which is, of course, the introduction of Emil Blonsky, seemingly being a reformed changed man, writing haikus, whatnot. But then the ending, having the guy who hired Jennifer Walters, having her tune into the TV, which then made things a little bit more on the interesting side, which is the reveal that Emil broke out of prison and is now in some form of fighting ring over in Hong Kong. In other words, it's the slight quote-unquote twist that that She-Hulk is taking place at the same time as Shang-Chi. Now finally matching up with the fight between Abomination and Wong in the middle of Shang-Chi before Shang-Chi finds his sister. So I thought that was pretty neat, and we're finally going to have a very thorough connection there, and him, going out and doing these fights will not only really put some importance on Jen having to represent Emil and all these other superpowered beings, but also factor in Wong and exactly why it is that why did Wong break Abomination out of prison? Why is he so integral to going and have these fights, only for him to then bring him back? Because if you guys remember in Shang-Chi, when they're in the locker room talking and then he opens the portal to then leave, you see on the other side that the cell's right there. You can kind of see like the lasers and the background and whatnot. So the cell that he has to go back into is right there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds in future episodes, or possibly even in the next episode that I haven't really watched yet. And then, speaking of Bruce and haikus, we have a rather self-referential scene of Jen calling to let Bruce know about Emil Blonsky and how she's going to be representing him. Only for Bruce to say, "Hey, we're cool. I'm a completely different person now." Hardy har har. Yes, I get the joke. Along with that, though, the main thing that had everybody drop their jaws, I kind of did, but at the same time, who knows, considering the legalities behind this. But the big takeaway was that Hulk has in fact been taken by that Sakaar ship we saw in episode 1. And he's on his way somewhere. He jumps into some kind of hyperspeed type teleport thing, and he's out of there. And he's going to be MIA for a little while. And so a lot of people had already made their theories saying World War Hulk, Planet Hulk. Some of the creators or the director, I believe, has hinted, not fully confirmed, but hinted that he's going to go and take care of some business that he left unfinished on Sakaar from Ragnarok. So that's where a lot of people's perceptions are going, that we're going to finally get some World War Hulk or Planet Hulk material. But the reason why I'm a little skeptical of that is considering the technical legalities behind that and how Universal still has the rights to solo Hulk stuff, whether it be a movie, a show, what have you. So I don't know how Hulk is going to factor into maybe some other character that Marvel can kind of negotiate with to have that happen, or what's going on with that. But I guess the finale is not the episode that I was thinking Bruce was going to come back in, because they said that Bruce was going to be in 2 episodes. It looks like this was the second one. I was thinking it was going to be the premiere and the finale, but now we're officially on the Gen train. We'll see if it's a good ride. Okay, so it's time to bring it back to video games because I do feel like it's been a little bit dry news, and now with Gamescom, I feel like there's at least some publishers / developers that should be looking at their own thing and being like, okay, can we actually start to talk? Can we actually start to build hype on something that we got cooking? It looks like out of all the developers that we truly do want to hear from and actually want to get information from and see what what their talents have been being put to use and what their people have been hard at work. Out of all these companies and developers, the one that we actually ended up hearing from is fucking Ubisoft. Ubisoft is working on another Assassin's Creed, and it was being kind of teeter-tattered a little while. I don't say a little while, but I want to say a few days in very concrete form. It's funny because it was like, rumor has it, and then they list all the details, and to me, I go, that's not a rumor, that was a leak from an employee, and I think to combat this, we're probably going to get confirmation in like the next day or two, and sure enough, Ubisoft has come forward to confirm that the next Assassin's Creed game is going to be called Assassin's Creed Mirage is the next game, and they're going to be talking about it a little bit more at a Ubisoft Forward on September 10th, which is quite literally next week. So we don't really have to wait too long from the full breakdown, the full details. But here's the bummer though. September 10th, that is a Saturday. So it's not going to be in the middle of the week next week. In fact, it might not even be talked about on next week's episode because of where it kind of lands. So it's probably going to be the episode after that I will probably do a full breakdown of how I feel about this next Assassin's Creed. Is it going to be like a day one? I do, however, have the list here of the stuff that was kind of being rumored and mentioned, and just kind of passed around on Twitter. As far as the things that were being talked about or leaked about. So prior to the official reveal or confirmation from Ubisoft, this was an article published over at psu.com. So it reads, Assassin's Creed Mirage is reportedly, obviously now confirmed, launching spring 2023 and is going to be a back to basics, quote, removes RPG elements. This is a weird ass headline. I'm so sorry. But anyways, fresh details on the next chapter in the Assassin's Creed franchise, which we've already learned reportedly takes place in Baghdad, will launch in spring 2023 and will bring back Eagle Vision and go back to basics. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit on the article here, and it reads, quote, reportedly the game will be titled Assassin's Creed Mirage and will be set during the period 860 to 870 and focus on Basim in his youth as a thief until he joins the Hidden Ones. The first Assassin's Creed apparently had a strong influence on its back-to-basics focus, although talk about there being multiple cities to explore were shot down by Schreier? I guess he's the one that broke the leak here with the Element Station Schreier again, of course. Elsewhere, Eagle Vision is coming back, and the RPG elements that formed the core of the last couple of games are being removed. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Origins, and I think Odyssey. Those are the main three where, people's main complaint, which I totally agree with, was that Assassin's Creed was no longer Assassin's Creed. Like, it was Assassin's Creed by name, but otherwise it was just your typical open-world RPG fodder that people were utilizing to make fun of Ubisoft constantly whenever a game like that was released, even if it was from a different company. Well, as much as I like the game, when Horizon Forbidden West came out, that was the moniker that people were using to slander the game, was to say, oh, it's a Ubisoft game, or it's a glorified, very polished Ubisoft game, etc., because of that shit. Because those last Assassin's Creed games, you take away the name, and you're kind of dealing with a third-person, much stealthier Far Cry, or less technological and less modern version of Watch Dogs. They were all kind of swapping DNA. Wow, that sounds terrible. But they were just kind of all being interjected with each other, and that was one of the problems. So they're hoping that one of the things that will alleviate that or fix that to a degree is to remove said RPG elements. Uh, Continuing reading on here, it removes a couple of games are being removed. So that means no dialogue choices, no gender choices, and no leveling system. So the way you were able to level up before, attribute points, dialogue choices, and then gender choices. So one of the big draws, especially from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, was that you were able to. God, I can't. I feel bad about this, but I cannot remember the guy's name. I think it was like Solopolis or something like that. But Cassandra, I do remember her name. Cassandra with a K was the female version you get of the main character you could play as in Odyssey, which I heard is actually a much better, more compelling, and charismatic version of that main character. Uh, Frankly, however, that whole choice, that whole element is going to be taken out. You're only going to be able to play as a singular, pre-chosen character with pre-chosen events in the story and just kind of watch it unfold, which is their emphasis on going back to basics. As the article kind of continues reading on here, the biggest thing to take away from this is the mention of Assassin's Creed 1 Remake, which is reportedly going to be integrated into the game's Season Pass. The remake will apparently utilize a lot of assets from Mirage and will be released a few months after Assassin's Creed Mirage. So instead of adding DLC to the game like they always do with that season pass, because you know it's happening, just like recently they had, what was it called, Dawn of Ragnarok with fucking Valhalla. Uh, the season pass will literally they'll legit throw in a full blown remake of one. I gotta be honest, that might be kind of cool. That might be kind of cool. Because out of all the Assassin's Creed games, I think one is undoubtedly, I'm saying this, but I am so confident that I'm willing to bet a lot of other people feel the same way as well. That first game would definitely need a remake because there's so many areas of that game that could heavily be improved, from the graphics to the gameplay to the structure to how linear everything felt. I'm not saying go open world, but I'm just saying like it could feel better, because I remember having so many frustrating moments in that one time that I played that first game where I'm like, I know I jumped, or I know I detached from the ledge, and yet you're not detaching. What the hell are you doing? When I played it originally on the PS3, it's so far back that that's one of the games that came out on PS3 and Xbox 360. And when it came out on PS3, they were still using the Spider-Man font on the logo. That's how far back it's been. I think it's 2009 it was, or 2007 I think, because in 2009 was 2, and then 10, 11 is when we started to get the annualized Assassin's Creed with like Brotherhood, Revelations 3, etc., etc. Yeah. Yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, no, 2007. 2007. 15 years. I would say a remake to kind of overhaul a few of those graphics, but also fine tune the mechanics to get a little bit of the parkourisms of the more recent Assassin's Creeds. Don't go full open world. And also the fact that Mirage is going to be taking away it might bump some people out, but to be honest, I think taking out these RPG elements will probably debloat the game, because one thing that everybody was complaining about Valhalla, I can't say I'm there because I haven't played Valhalla. I literally have it for PS5. I got it for like $15 on Black Friday sale last year. But one of the things that everybody hated about Valhalla was just how bloated it was. How people were coming back reporting that to beat the main game is by itself, to just beat the main story, the main campaign is like 50 hours, 50 to 60 hours just for the main campaign. If you don't do any of the side stuff, 50 hours. And once you kind of hit 30 and you have other, bigger fish to fry as far as life, you kind of want to get through some of these games quicker, and to learn that the main campaign of a game without doing any of the side quests is already 50 to 60 hours. I'm like, nah, I don't know when exactly I'll get to that Valhalla. I might have to take a back seat on that one for a good while. So to know that Mirage is probably going to be cutting an awful lot of stuff that can lend to that bloat is kind of a good sign in my opinion. It's a bit more on the optimistic side to be like, okay, if you can bring us the synchronicity, no pun intended there, because you have to synchronize in the game, but rather the streamlinedness and the intuitiveness of the gameplay from 2 Brotherhood Revelations, but with the graphics and the physics engines of the newer ones like Odyssey and Valhalla, with the way that consoles like the Series X and the PS5 are able to give us that graphical fidelity that they were boasting about with Valhalla, and mesh it all into one streamlined, like I said, very cohesive 10 to 15 hour experience that puts equal emphasis on stealth and combat and making it feel good. This could be the return to Assassin's Creed that we've been longing for in a really long time. Like, that would be awesome, and do a good job of bringing back some grace to the Ubisoft name, because for a little while there, Ubisoft has been the name of constant parody and jokes. So much so that lately, I was even going back and forth if I should even pick up Sparks of Hope, the new Mario Rabbids game, because of some of the weird practices they've been having behind the scenes. I'm like, I don't know if I want to really full on support that. I don't know, but well, we'll see as time kind of goes on here. Uh, but if they can get this right, of this whole mantra of wanting to go back to basics with AC Mirage, we could have a good one. And it'll be coming a little sooner than expected, 2023, but in the spring. They usually, I mean, unless I'm not remembering too well from at least the first couple of Assassin's Creeds, I want to say ever since 2 and maybe Brotherhood, every Assassin's Creed game has always come out in that latter holiday quarter, whether it be October or November. I don't think it's ever come out any other time of the year. So to see them kind of break from that to release in the spring, like say March or April, I'd say, that at least gives a little bit vote of confidence, or at least makes the optics look a little better, that they're willing to try things new so that hopefully we can get an awesome Assassin's Creed game. And speaking of speculative things and events and reveals that we potentially have to wait for, we also have another big one here. And I'm trying not to get myself too hyped, especially considering the company and how fucking weird they are. And it's Nintendo, of course. Nintendo, I feel like Pacino in Godfather Part 3. Just when I thought I got out, they pull me back in. Because here we have a new rumor, a legit rumor, hot off the presses, but it's one that, well, it's kind of hot off the presses, about to give or take a day or two. But it's a rumor here coming over from VG 24/7. Nintendo Direct September 2022 rumors suggest big news for Zelda fans. And then there's a little subtitle that reads, "Before you get excited, it's not Breath of the Wild 2 news. It's still something we've all been waiting for, though." And this is an article published by Kelsey Rayner. I'm liking her style of writing already. So, quote, "Just yesterday, a rumor emerged that the next Nintendo Direct is much closer than you might have thought, and it's going to be packed with news for keen Zelda fans. This report comes directly from Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb in a recent stream to YouTube." And this is Jeff Grubb. He's a major insider on Twitter and on YouTube. His batting average is generally, I want to say, somewhere in the 60s, like 60 something percent, where he's like 2/3 of the time right, and then a third of the time he's a little off. Some details are a little bit different, or he flat out gets it wrong, to be quite honest. But it's still not a bad batting average that Grubb is able to kind of get here, as far as, like, for example, right, I remember I mentioned him recently, and I'm like, yeah, didn't he do something recently that I thought to myself, oh, okay, there you go. There's him nailing it. And I just remembered, yeah, it was the Hogwarts Legacy delay, when the day before they announced the new date, which subsequently ended up being a delay in and of itself. It was also the day prior that he went on Twitter and said, "Hey guys, remember Hogwarts Legacy?" And I'm like, what is he hinting at? What is he talking about? Why is he talking about it that way? Is he trying to allude to something? And sure enough, it was the next day when Portkey Games revealed that February 10th, which also ended up being a delay. So, Grubb here, let's go ahead with the article real quick. In the video, Grubb suggests that a Nintendo Direct could be happening the week of September 12th. So that's, I guess, kind of next week, or technically speaking, the week after. So this one's even farther out than what I just talked about with Assassin's Creed, which is the same week that the Tokyo Game Show is expected to begin This does track, given that we have seen a Nintendo Direct every September since the launch of the Nintendo Switch in 2017. Okay, there's some lineage there. When it comes to what this rumored Nintendo Direct will feature, Grubb suggests that and this is Grubb saying, quote, I think there's going to be a lot of Zelda stuff at this thing. More specifically, it's believed that the Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD ports could very well be coming to the Nintendo Switch soon. These titles have been rumored before and are also very much titles that fans want to see on the newer consoles. There's also rumors that third parties will be showing up, but Grubb suggests these aren't all that exciting. So, following this, Grubb then said that Nintendo had finished versions of Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD sitting under its belt for quite a while. Reportedly, Nintendo will finish games, get stuff ready for the Switch, and then hold on to them. Remember when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 came out 3 months earlier than we expected? That would actually kind of line up. It does kind of feel like they do that sometimes. Like, for example, that Mario trilogy that, with 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, it does feel like that would have been a thing that they should have just shown or released when the Switch came out, period. But since they knew that Mario's 35th was going to be a few years later, they were like, let's hold on to this. Like, that's a very easy thing to do, but you're going to go ahead and wait off on that. We're also still waiting on that Metroid Prime trilogy on that subject. And then the article goes on to mentioning his stream and whatnot, yada yada. But so that about does it for the article. Thank you, Kelsey Rayner. Like I said, I like the way that she writes. So I like the way that she writes. So this is obviously just a rumor, purely speculative. There's really nothing to go on with until maybe we enter next week, and then Nintendo finally says, "Get excited, we got a Direct next week." Then we can finally get our hopes up to say that we're gonna get those ports, because yeah, I'm right there with a lot of other people that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, specifically Twilight Princess, are games that I really want to see on the Switch because A, we've had Wii U ports, so I don't know how you can't put them on Switch, but B, they're some of the more beloved Zelda games ever. Like the fact that we got Skyward Sword first before those two, it's a little mind-boggling. And I've played Wind Waker, love it. Never played Twilight Princess, so this would actually be a brand new experience for me. With that said, this is where I will admit I get a little conflicted inside, because I'm over here getting hyped for the potential release of these two Zelda games on Switch, and yet I'm also the same guy who's adamant to spend the full $70 on a remake of Last of Us Part 1. Isn't that crazy? I'm calling myself out here. I can't believe I'm doing that. But it is true. It's like, wow, why is Nintendo able to get away with this shit? And to me, it really does fall. If I was to make an argument for the devil, it would be as a legitimate devil's advocacy. It would be simply time. The fact that it's been literally over a decade and a half almost. No. I want to say we're coming up on 20 years since Wind Waker. Not Twilight Princess for sure, but Wind Waker. When did Wind Waker come out? I want to say that's like 2003, 2004. So give me a little while I look that up. But yeah, I think it really does fall down on the time. That I think is probably the biggest thing that causes a lot of people. 20 fucking years. I was right. Wind Waker came out December 13th, 2002. It's literally been 20 years since Wind Waker. So getting a port on the Switch, it's not a whole, it's not, you can't fault us for being a little hyped. Whereas Last of Us, not only did we get a direct sequel to The Last of Us in 2020, but in 2014 we got the remaster. We got people endlessly talking about it. The remaster works on PS5, and now we get a remake. So in the span of less than 10 years, 9 years, we got the original game, a remaster, a sequel, improvements to the sequel, and now a full-blown remake of the first one. I think it's because of the exhaustion of how long it's been talked about in succession, along with also already how much, for lack of a better term, derivatives we've had of the game since then. And I think it's because of that people put into contention, like, is $70 worth it? Whereas with, let's say it's a double pack, it's a 2-pack of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, goes for the full $60. Some of us will ration that as like, well, it's $30. Yeah, there's no improvements, but we get to take it with it on the go, and it's for older games that we haven't played in quite literally over a decade, maybe even 2 decades, and it's $30. I'm not excusing it, but there's a dialogue to have. And with Last of Us, I'm not going to say I won't get it because I have seen the shots. I've seen some of those shots where I look at the A, I look at the B, and I'm like, yeah, it is overhauled completely. It really, really is. But I guess it's because I'm just so burnt out about talking about The Last of Us, and it's a full $70 that I'm like, a sale. It really has to be a sale because it is a game that I've already played not once but twice actually. I think I played this game twice. Once off stream when it first came out back in 2013 on my PS3, and then a second time on stream for the remaster to kind of get the remaster out of the way to experience the 60 FPS and the cleaner details, the cleaner visuals. So I think that's where that factor kind of comes in and where I can attempt to make a defense for why it is that I'm willing to wait on a sale. Excuse me. I'm willing to wait on a sale for Last of Us Part 1 remake, but should in the next couple of weeks Nintendo announce ports of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker on the Switch, and I'm going to be almost day one for that, yeah, it does look bad. Don't get me wrong. It does look bad, especially when I sometimes talk shit about Nintendo. And who knows? Maybe when they reveal it, they'll, because what was the thing that I hadn't bought? Well, first of all, I did buy Skyward Sword, but I didn't buy it at full price. It was on sale. And I used a $10 Best Buy certificate, so I got it even deeper discount. But there was one other thing that I did not buy. Oh, I haven't bought Metroid Dread because I thought that for $60, a little side scroller, as great as I heard the reviews be, it's a side scroller Metroid and never been about Metroid like that. Still haven't bought it. And I think, recently I've seen it kind of go for about $40-50 here and there in certain retailers. So I might pick it up at that price. But for now, still haven't gotten that. And there were a couple of other things from Nintendo that I still have not full on bought because I just thought to myself, it's just not worth it. That collection or that thing is just not worth it. I waited on, or I used means to try to get it at a discount. And I might end up doing the same thing with Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. If the expansion pass, the N64 expansion pass for Nintendo Online, haven't bought that at all. Never bought that. I even let my online subscription run out because I'm like, I'm not playing my Switch like that. And when I do, I'm just playing single player games. So why do it? And I'm not even streaming anymore. So yeah, I'm not full on like day one there like some other people are on YouTube for Nintendo products. Splatoon 3, I haven't even pre-ordered. I'm waiting for reviews on that. And so if the reveal comes forward with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, and it shows that it looks ugly, and they reveal that they're going to be the PAL. If there's an article revealing, it's the PAL version, so the frame rate's going to be weird and all that stuff, then yeah, maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll emulate instead. I don't know. But it is I would be lying and be completely hypocritical to say that I can't have a myopic bean of excitement to know that I can take one of my favorite Zelda experiences, Wind Waker, on the go without emulation, without worrying about certain frame rates and settings and things like that, and being able to intuitively play it on a very slim profile device like the Nintendo Switch versus something that's a little bit on the girthier side like the Steam Deck. And so there's a little bit of comfort in knowing that could be coming down the pipeline. But of course, right now, this is purely a rumor. For a while, we thought we were going to get a proper Zelda anniversary presentation, and that ended up getting still hijacked by that fucking plumber. And we never got those collections. We have yet to get a Metroid Prime collection. So it's just a matter of being patient and seeing the chaotic cyclone unfold that is Nintendo. And then to close the episode off with a couple of rapid fire stories, because it really is still leaning more towards the speculative side, but also ramping up for potential game announcements, and one of which, as I just kind of mentioned here with the rumored Nintendo Direct, because of how it lines up with Tokyo Game Show, it looks like another potential announcement from Konami, out of all developers, might be lining up with that event as well. This is over from IGN, the article reading, quote, Konami is about to unveil an unknown game in a world-loved franchise at this year's Tokyo Game Show, which takes place from September 15th to 18th. As reported by Gematsu, Konami's schedule for the show doesn't say much about the game itself, only adding the voice actor Yuki Kaji will take to the stage to announce it. Kaji is a pretty big name in video game voice acting, having appeared in Grand Theft Auto 5, Final Fantasy XIII, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and many, many more. He's only appeared in 3 Konami games, however, 2 of which are part of the long-dormant Suikoden franchise, and the other a Japanese game called Terror of the Stratus on PSP. There's a tweet, a screen grab of the tweet here, which pretty much references all that. Fans of the franchise have already noticed the connection on Twitter, with Sika Square Parts above pointing out that Kaji's only Konami games of world renown are 2008's Suikoden Tank, I'm mispronouncing this, I know it, Tier Karis, and 2012's Gensao Suikoden. I'm going to skip over this, but the last 2 games to be released in the classic RPG series, only originally released on PlayStation. Suikoden is an RPG series most famous for including over 100 playable characters in its mainline game, as well as stylized 2D art and animations, fortress building aspects, yada yada yada. So basically, nothing is confirmed. Okay, as it reads right here, nothing is confirmed, of course, and Konami reportedly has several other franchises in development that, given its voice acting prestige, could easily involve Kaji. Silent Hill is another Konami franchise that is heavily rumored to be making a comeback at some point, with the last of a long line of leaks taking place in May. 4 images of an alleged new Silent Hill game appeared on Twitter before the copyright holder took them down, leading many to believe they were legitimate. So, gonna end the quotes from the article there. Pretty much, a lot of people are speculating that maybe at this Tokyo Game Show, we'll be getting another Silent Hill. And I personally have never gotten into the Silent Hill games like that. It's funny because I feel like I've gravitated more towards Resident Evil than I did Silent Hill. I just wish that there was some form of like definitive set, and who knows, maybe that's what will be getting announced here from Konami at Tokyo Game Show. Would be maybe some kind of bundle that comes with all of them, because there is a collection that you can do like backwards compatibility with the Xbox, but it only has 2 and 3. It doesn't have 1. I want like all the ones that have been released, including the spin-offs. I mean, is there like a rights issue with Konami? I know they're not necessarily strangers to that, but it'll be nice to see if maybe we can get something that's just kind of everything included, so that you can get, the basic essentials of what makes up Silent Hill and why people love the series. To kind of introduce newcomers to the whole franchise like myself, that would be a great starting point, and that would not be a bad thing to announce, like a remaster, remake kind of packet that they can kind of put all these experiences together on one package for modern consoles, whether it be with PS5, Xbox Series, PC, etc. That'd be nice. I would actually kind of take that. I mean, it might not be a brand new entry like some people would like it for it to be, but I will be welcome to it. So that was one little piece of news here. The other one, I have personally a little bit more of stakes in because of how much I like this franchise. I have yet to play the 3rd game, but I hear it's kind of okay. It's not bad, but it's like okay. What really stand out from the franchise are the first 2, and that is Mafia. So apparently, it looks like we might be getting another brand new Mafia game to be in development right now. Quoting over here from the IGN article, after months of rumors, Hangar 13 confirmed today that a brand new Mafia game is under development, though it remains to be seen whether it will be titled Mafia 4. The news come from a Mafia 20th anniversary interview with Hangar 13 general manager Roman Haldik and head of production and media director Tona Hybektek. God, I'm so sorry that these last couple of articles feature names that I'm pretty much ruining at this point. The pair took the time to look back at the franchise's journey over the past 20 years before Hidek got to the news. I'm happy to confirm we started work on an all-new Mafia project. While it's a few years away and we can't share anything more right now, we're really excited to keep working on this beloved franchise and to entertain our players with new stories. As the name implies, Mafia is basically an open world version of The Godfather, featuring a story that stretches from the 1930s to the 1960s. Hangar 13 remade the original Mafia in 2020. I played it, I really, really liked it, which we praised for featuring excellent performances from its new cast, a fantastic driving model, and a beautiful and authentic city oozing with 1930s atmosphere. A hypothetical Mafia 4 has been rumored for some time now. It's unclear where or when it will be set, but based on the story progression, a Scarface-like 1980s setting wouldn't be out of the question. It's technically true because one was between the 30, like I said right here, 1930s atmosphere. Pretty much chronicles the 30s to the 60s. Basically, Mafia 1 was like 30s and maybe a little bit of 40s. I don't want to divulge too much there. And then 2 was 40s to the 50s, 60s. Kind of going through those 2 decades. And I even though I haven't played it, I can easily tell that Mafia 3 is from the 50s, 60s, and then possibly bleeding a little bit into the 70s, which has led people to believe that Mafia 4 is probably going to be somewhere between the 70s to the 80s, maybe even end on the early 90s, at the turn of an era where people are kind of forgetting about that grandiose life of the Mafia gangster. That would be a kind of a nice little turning point that I would personally speculate about and be like, you know what? Mafia 4, sign me up. I'm down. Especially from the original creators here at Hangar 13. And if they can take what they pretty much introduced as far as gameplay mechanics and physics and graphical fidelity from the remake of Mafia 1 in 2020. Oh, yes. Because that to me is actually one of the finer remakes. When people talk about the newer remakes that everybody loves, people are quick to say Resident Evil 2, and what was the other one? Final Fantasy 13. Final Fantasy 7 remake. Yes, don't get me wrong. Like, my favorite Resident Evil game, if somebody were to ask me, is RE2 remake. And so I can't speak too much bad against it. And with Final Fantasy 7 remake, yes and no, because if you've played the game, you know that they're kind of going in a different direction where it's not even a remake anymore. It's more like a second sequel or second breach into something different. So it's kind of like a remake, kind of not now at this point. It's a different project altogether. So to me, it kind of bums me out that a lot of more people are not talking about that Mafia 2020 remake because it's that legit. Like, people should definitely pick it up, especially if it's on sale. I have since played 2, the definitive edition, which has been patched up because I heard it was a buggy mess upon release. Still had its bugs, but at least they were minimized to an extent. And I have yet to play 3, but still, this is a franchise that I really, 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 really do like, damn near love. So to see that they're bringing a 4th one, possibly with a different setting, different characters, but utilizing what really worked for them in that remake of Mafia 1, please do it. Now, even though I haven't played 3, I heard a lot of people did not like the open world of 3 because of how empty it is. Well, you guys got the blueprint, and that you guys already nailed it in the remake for 1. So make sure that you give us a fully lived open world to explore set in the 1970s and 80s with great side activities and side missions to do, because that's the thing, is that even though I do like the open worldness of those first 2 Mafia games, they also were just traversal points. You're just kind of driving from one area to the next with dialogue options. You don't really get to do much in them. You get to shop for some clothes and some parts for your car and stuff like that, but it would be nice to actually go and have a drink, go and actually shoot darts or play pool or go out on dates. Yeah, take a little bit of a page from Grand Theft Auto, but with the Mafia aesthetic and with that tone and that kind of professionalism that these, Mafia members live and die by. Kind of take a little bit of how your characters live in this world and actually make the game kind of live that way. And if Mafia 4 can kind of go in that direction, oh man. I know it's a few years out, but that's already going to be a game I'm hyped for day one. And with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode. This actually ended up being a little on the meatier side than I was expecting, especially since, like I said, me and the girlfriend are still kind of bouncing back from our COVID prognosis. But here's to hoping that by next week, we'll both be negative. We'll both be being able to get back to the things that we like doing outside of the house, even though, of course, there's so much that I like to get done inside. But outside of that, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled form of energy and with more stories, with more things unfolding, especially if more stuff comes down the pipeline here as far as reveals for new Assassin's Creed games, Nintendo stuff, PlayStation stuff, maybe. I believe, holy shit, what was it, last year and the year before that, PlayStation was also one of the ones that always had something coming in September. I think it was in the September showcase when the PlayStation 5 was revealed, so it's possible that maybe in the next week or two, we might get some stuff from PlayStation getting unveiled in a brand new showcase. Who knows? I will try to keep as much of that stuff up to date through the podcast. I will try to catch up on She-Hulk so that we can get to talking about episode 3. Maybe next week I'll finally be able to nail down a 2-parter, do episodes 3 and 4, and finally catch up. We shall see. But in the meantime, guys, you guys know where to find me when I'm not podcasting or making content, making content for the Batman and Spider-Man channel. Of course, Twitter and Instagram is where you can go ahead and keep in touch at DarkspiderDavid on one word, or you can simply just click the links in the description that will take you to those, as the website and aforementioned niche channel, so you guys can subscribe. We're on the cusp-ish, not really, but kind of closer than before on getting to 4,000 subscribers, and then hopefully from there 5,000. After that, hopefully 10K, so on and so forth. It's growing, and every time that I think to myself, what else can I really do? I come up with a brand new idea. Right now, I'm working on that Steam Deck Spider-Man video. In the meantime, still have plenty of other action figures to cover and record. I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully you guys are going to be there for that as well. Otherwise, gonna go ahead and start resting up the voice, catching myself some proper nutrients, and getting myself to that negative status. Otherwise, stay humble, guys. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you guys next week. See ya.